He was dying in the Arizona desert. His horse was dead. His canteen was empty, and he had only one piece of bread left. Then he found an Apache woman collapsed under the scorching sun. She whispered just one word: water. Matt knew that if he shared his last food, he might die too, but he gave her the larger half. What happened next was unbelievable. She suddenly stood up, pointed toward the red rocks, and said, 3 miles. Water. The next morning, Matt discovered who she really was, and 50 Apache riders arrived with a shocking offer that changed his life forever. Watch until the end, because this cowboy's greatest reward wasn't gold. Watch Love in the Wild West on the next video app as soon as possible. Please subscribe to my channel. Here is the English translation of the script. Matt Harrison had been lost in the Arizona desert for 3 days. His horse had died 2 miles back. His canteen had been empty since yesterday, and all that remained in his backpack was a piece of hard bread. The sun beat down on the dunes like molten metal, burning every inch of exposed skin. His lips were cracked, his tongue swollen, and every step was agony. He walked aimlessly, following the scarce shadow of the rocks, when he saw something that shouldn't have been there. A human figure fallen among the stones, motionless under the murderous sun. At first, he thought it was another mirage. He had already seen 3 that day. A crystal-clear lake, a village with white houses. He even thought he saw his mother calling him from a hill. But as he stumbled closer, he discovered this vision was different. It was real. It was a young woman dressed in traditional Apache clothing, leather decorated with turquoise beads. She lay on her back, eyes closed, black hair spread across the sand. Her brown skin shone with fever and sweat. Her lips were pale, almost white. Matt fell to his knees beside her, kicking up a cloud of dust. He touched her neck. She still had a pulse, weak but present. The woman opened her eyes slowly. They were black, deep as midnight wells, and looked at him with a strange calm that unsettled him. There was no fear in those eyes, no pleading, no desperation. Only observation. Water, she murmured in broken English. Matt shook his empty canteen in front of her. The hollow sound reminded him of his own desperation. Nothing, not a drop. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out the only thing he had left. A piece of bread as hard as stone, the size of his fist, was his last meal. If he shared it, he probably wouldn't survive until he found water or civilization. The woman kept looking at him. She asked for nothing, pleaded for nothing, but those dark eyes seemed to look directly into his soul. Matt looked at the bread in his trembling hand. He thought of all the times he had been selfish in his life, of all the opportunities he had had to help and didn't. He thought of his mother, who always told him, "Matt, a man's character is measured by what he does when no one is watching." He broke the bread in 2 halves and gave her the larger portion. "Eat slowly," he said with a hoarse voice, "little by little." The woman took the bread with trembling hands and began to chew slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Matt put his small portion in his pocket. He wasn't even hungry anymore, only thirsty. A thirst that burned his throat like embers. When the woman finished eating, something extraordinary happened. She stood up with an agility that someone on the brink of death shouldn't possess. She moved with grace, as if the desert didn't affect her, as if she had just woken up from a nap, rather than agonizing under the sun. She observed Matt for several seconds, studying him as if memorizing every detail of his face. Then she pointed north with her slender arm. 3 miles, she said now in Spanish, with a clear and strong voice. Water. Follow the red rocks. Friends, if you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments which country you are watching from. That motivates us greatly to keep bringing you this content. Matt wanted to ask her 1,000 questions. Who was she? What was she doing alone in the desert? Why was she so weak a moment ago and now seemed completely recovered? But before he could open his mouth, she disappeared among the rocks with the speed of a frightened deer. He stood there stunned, the sun beating down on him mercilessly. He looked at his hand. The larger half of the bread was gone. It hadn't been a dream. It had been real. With the last strength he had left, he began to walk north, following the red rocks exactly as she had indicated. 3 miles later, just as she had promised, he found a small oasis hidden among rock formations, fresh crystal clear water surrounded by green plants. Matt fell to his knees and drank like a thirsty animal, submerging his entire head in the cold water. He drank until his stomach hurt, filled his canteen to the brim and soaked his shirt and hat. He was saved, but the questions wouldn't leave him alone. Who was that woman? How did she know the exact location of the water? Why was she alone in the desert? And how did she recover so quickly after eating only half a piece of bread? He camped that night by the oasis. He made a small fire with dry branches and cooked his tiny portion of bread over the embers to soften it. As he ate slowly, savoring every crumb as if it were the best banquet of his life, he thought of his mother and her words about character. The night sky filled with stars, thousands of them shining like diamonds on black velvet. Matt had never seen so many stars together. In the desert, far from any town or city, the entire universe seemed to unfold above his head. He thought about his wandering life. He was a cowboy, without tie, without family, since his mother died 5 years ago without a permanent home. He wandered from ranch to ranch, working for food and a few dollars. He never stayed long enough to make real friends. He had never had a reason to put down roots anywhere. But that Apache woman, something in her gaze had marked him deeply. A silent strength, a dignity he had never seen in anyone. He had given her his last bread without thinking, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And now, under the infinite stars, he wondered if he would ever cross paths with her again. He had no idea that his question would be answered at dawn, because when the sun had barely begun to paint the horizon, orange and gold, Matt heard something that made him jump out of his sleeping bag. The unmistakable sound of many horses approaching. He stood up abruptly, grabbing his rifle. But when he saw what was coming from the hills, the weapon nearly fell from his hands. It was an impressive procession. 50 Apache riders, perhaps more, advancing in perfect formation on magnificent horses. At the front rode an elder with a face weathered like old leather, wearing an imposing headdress of eagle feathers that shone in the dawn light. And beside him, riding a horse as white as snow, was her, the woman from the desert. Matt stood paralyzed, his heart beating like a war drum in his chest. The 50 Apache riders stopped 20 meters from the oasis. The silence that followed was so dense that Matt could hear the wind whispering among the rocks. None of the warriors dismounted. They remained motionless, like bronze statues, observing him with indescribable expressions. The elder, with the feathered headdress, dismounted slowly, with the dignity of someone who has lived many lives. He must have been 70 years old, perhaps more, but he moved with the strength of a 40-year-old man. His face was marked by 1,000 wrinkles that told stories of battles, droughts, victories, and losses. His eyes, dark as coal, looked at Matt with an intensity that made him take a step back. The woman also dismounted. In the dawn light, Matt could see her clearly for the first time. She was young, perhaps 25, with delicate but strong features. Her hair was braided with turquoise beads, and her leather dress was decorated with symbols he didn't recognize. The elder raised his right hand in a sign of peace. Matt, remembering what he had learned from the Apaches during his years of travel, did the same. "Do you speak English?" asked the elder, his voice deep like distant thunder. "Yes, sir," replied Matt, slowly lowering his rifle. "And some Spanish." "Spanish, then," said the elder, switching languages effortlessly. "My name is Chief Eagle Sky. This is my daughter, Naira." Matt felt as if he had been punched in the chest. Daughter. The woman he had helped was the chief's daughter. Suddenly, everything took on a different, more dangerous weight. I didn't know," he stammered. "I just wanted to help." Chief Eagle Sky took 3 steps forward. He was taller than Matt had thought, almost the same height. He observed him in silence for what seemed like an eternity, studying every detail of his face, his torn clothes, his dusty boots. "My daughter was testing you," the chief finally said. "She was not lost nor dying. She was observing who you really are." Matt felt the ground move beneath his feet. A test. Everything had been a test. 3 days ago, the chief continued. We saw your horse die. We saw you walk without giving up. We saw how you shared your water with an injured coyote yesterday morning. And finally, we saw how you gave my daughter your last food, believing you would starve to death. Matt didn't know what to say. He had completely forgotten the incident with the coyote. He had found the animal trapped between the rocks with a broken leg and had used part of his precious water to give it a drink before freeing it. Nara spoke for the first time, her voice soft but clear. Father, this man has a different heart. Not all white men are the same. Chief Eagle Sky nodded slowly. Then, to Matt's absolute surprise, he smiled. It was a broad smile that completely transformed his severe face. Cowboy Matt Harrison's, said the chief solemnly. That piece of bread you shared with my daughter was not just bread. It was respect. It was honor. It was the recognition that we are all equal under the same sun. He made a signal with his hand. Immediately, 20 riders dismounted and began to unload huge bundles from their horses. Matt watched with widening eyes as they unpacked the load's bread. Hundreds of freshly baked loaves, still warm with an incredible aroma that made his stomach rumble. They piled them on blankets, creating mountains of food. Matt counted quickly. There were at least 1,000 loaves, perhaps more. For your bread, said the chief. We return 1,000. But that wasn't all. Other riders unloaded more things. Blankets woven with beautiful designs, perfectly tanned deer hides, baskets full of dried corn and beans, canteens of fresh water, dried meat, dried fruit, and even a new rifle wrapped in leather. Matt was completely overwhelmed. Chief, this is too much. I cannot accept. You haven't seen everything, interrupted the chief with that mysterious smile. He signaled again to the main group of riders. 20 young women stepped forward. All wore traditional Apache clothing with beads and unique designs. They were sisters, cousins, and nieces of the chief, all part of his extended family. They were between 18 and 25 years old, and all, observed Matt with curiosity. These are my relatives, explained the chief. 20 women from my clan. They have come to offer you their service. Matt felt panic. Service? I don't. What you think, the chief interrupted. And for the first time, Matt detected humor in his voice. They will teach you our customs, cook for you, show you how to survive in this desert. They will teach you our language, our traditions. For 1 month, you will be our guest of honor. One of the young women stepped forward. She was tall, about 20 years old, with a friendly smile. My name is Kiona, she said in perfect Spanish. I will be your language teacher. Another stepped forward, shorter but with eyes bright with intelligence. I am Tajira. I will teach you the plants of the desert, which ones heal and which ones kill. One by one, the 20 women introduced themselves. Each had a specific skill: cooking, healing, tracking, weaving, hide tanning, tribal stories, ceremonial songs. They were teachers, not servants. Matt looked at Naira, who remained beside her father. She watched him with that same indecipherable expression from yesterday. I don't understand, Matt finally said. Why do you do all this? I only shared a piece of bread. Chief Eagle Sky placed his hand on Matt's shoulder. It was a paternal, warm gesture. My son, he said with a deep voice. In this world, small actions reveal big hearts. That bread represented your life, your survival, and you gave it without thinking twice. That tells us who you really are. He paused, looking toward the horizon where the sun was already shining fully. Furthermore, the chief continued, a long time ago, when I was young like you, a white man saved my life without asking for anything in return. I could never repay that debt because he died before I could find him. Today, through you, I can finally settle that account. Matt felt a lump in his throat. So what must I do? Come with us, replied the chief simply. Know our people, our way of life. And after a month, if you decide to leave, you will leave with our blessings and provisions for your journey. But if you decide to stay, the chief looked significantly at his daughter Nara. Well then, we will talk about other possibilities. The Apache camp was located in a valley hidden between reddish mountains, invisible to anyone who didn't know its exact location. When Matt arrived mounted on the horse they had gifted him, he was breathless at what he saw. More than 100 teepees formed concentric circles around a central plaza. Children ran between the tents, their laughter filling the air. Women worked tanning hides, weaving baskets, and preparing food. Men returned from hunting with deer over their shoulders. It was a complete community, vibrant, full of life. Chief Eagle Sky assigned Matt a teepee in the outer circle, decorated with eagle and mountain symbols. It was spacious and surprisingly comfortable, with soft furs on the floor, and a fire pit in the center for the cold desert nights. "Rest today," the chief told him. "Tomorrow your learning begins." But rest was impossible. Within minutes, the 20 women began to arrive, each bringing something different. Kiona arrived with new blankets. Tajira brought medicinal herbs for his cracked lips. Another, called Saya, arrived with traditional Apache clothing, soft leather pants, a shirt decorated with beads, and comfortable moccasins that fit his feet perfectly. "You cannot dress like a cowboy here," Saya explained with a smile. "The desert sun is cruel to that heavy clothing." One by one, they all arrived. Every 15 minutes, someone appeared with food, water, utensils, or simply to ask if he needed anything. They were kind, cheerful, chatty, joking among themselves in Apache, then laughing and translating for Matt. It was overwhelming and wonderful at the same time, but Matt noticed something. Naira never came. He saw her from afar, always near the chief's central teepee, watching from a distance. Every time their eyes met, she quickly looked away. She didn't smile, didn't approach, didn't speak to him. She was like a beautiful ghost floating on the periphery of his new life. On the third day, formal lessons began. In the morning, Kiona taught him Apache words. Sequis, friend, Deshu, Ya-a-8, hello, greeting. Matt discovered he had a knack for languages and soon could form simple sentences. In the afternoon, Tajira took him on walks through the desert, showing him life-saving plants. Aloe for burns, desert sage for fevers, mesquite whose pods were edible and nutritious. "The desert is not your enemy," she told him. "It is your teacher if you know how to listen." In the evenings, they all gathered around the communal fire. They sang traditional songs with voices that harmonized perfectly. Some played drums made of deer skin. Others shook rattles decorated with feathers. Matt sat among them, listening, learning, feeling something inside him begin to change, but his eyes always searched for Naira. She sat far away beside her father, wrapped in a red blanket. Sometimes she sang with a voice so beautiful that everyone fell silent to listen. Other times she simply stared at the fire, lost in thoughts Matt couldn't imagine. And when he looked at her, she always looked away. "Why doesn't Naira come closer?" he finally asked Kiona one night. Kiona smiled conspiratorially. "She is the chief's daughter. She cannot behave like us. She must maintain distance, dignity. Besides," she paused dramatically, "she is watching you all the time. She is just very good at hiding it." Matt felt his heart skip a beat. "She watches me. We all notice it," intervened Saya, who was braiding leather nearby. "We have never seen her look at a man like that, not even the bravest warriors of our tribe." That night, Matt couldn't sleep. He left his teepee and walked to the edge of the camp, where a small stream flowed down from the mountains. The full moon illuminated everything with silver light, making the rocks shine like polished metal. He heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned sharply, and there she was. Naira wore the same red blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her loose hair fell like a dark cascade down her back. In the moonlight, she seemed made of light and shadow. "I couldn't sleep," she said in soft Spanish. "Neither could I," replied Matt, noticing his voice sounded strange. They remained silent for a long time, listening to the murmur of the water. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, but one filled with unspoken words, questions floating in the night air. "Why do you avoid me?" Matt finally asked. Naira looked at the water, her fingers playing with the edge of her blanket. "I don't avoid you. I observe you." "Why?" "Because I need to understand." She turned to look at him directly. Her eyes shone in the darkness. "My father has opened the doors of our world to you. My sisters and cousins teach you our secrets. But I need to know, do you really want to be here, or are you just being polite until you can escape?" Matt took a step toward her. "Every day I spend here," he said with brutal honesty, "I feel more at home than in my entire previous life. Your people have shown me more kindness in 1 week than I received in 30 years among my own." "And what about me?" asked Naira, and for the first time Matt detected vulnerability in her voice. "What do you think of me?" Matt swallowed hard. "I think about you all the time. Since that moment in the desert, when I first saw you, I can't stop looking for you with my eyes. And when our eyes meet, even for a second, it's as if everything else disappears." Naira closed her eyes as if his words physically hurt her. "You shouldn't have said that." "Why not?" "Because now I will also have to admit the truth," she whispered. "When I saw you give your last bread without hesitation, when I saw that you chose kindness over your own survival, something inside me woke up. I have known many brave warriors, many strong men, but I had never met someone with a heart like yours." Matt felt the world stop. "Naira, no." She raised her hand, stopping him. "There is still much you don't know about our world. There are still tests you must face. My father has accepted you, but the entire tribe must accept you too. And there are problems coming, Matt. Problems that will test everything you believe you know about honor and loyalty." "What kind of problems?" Naira looked toward the mountains to the west. "White men. They are coming to claim our land, our water. They say they have papers, documents that give them rights to all of this. My father is old, wise, but also tired. We need—" She stopped, biting her lip. "We need a bridge between two worlds." The next morning, Matt woke up to alarm cries. He ran out of his teepee and saw the whole tribe gathering in the central plaza. Chief Eagle Sky stood on a high rock, his face more serious than Matt had ever seen. "They arrived earlier than expected," the chief announced in Apache, then repeated in Spanish so Matt could understand. "The men from the river company are here." Matt then saw what had caused the commotion. At the edge of the valley, a group of 15 white men had set up camp. They wore formal suits completely unsuitable for the desert, elegant hats, and leather briefcases. They didn't look like cowboys or explorers. They looked like businessmen, and that made them more dangerous. Kona appeared beside Matt, her normally cheerful face now full of worry. "They have come 3 times this year," she explained. "They say they bought the rights to the mountain water. They want to build a dam that will divert all the water to the white towns in the east." "But this is Apache land," asked Matt. "It was Apache land," corrected Tajira, who had arrived from the other side. "Until the government sold the rights without consulting us. Now they have papers saying the water belongs to them." Matt felt boiling rage in his chest. He knew this story. He had seen it repeat itself throughout the West. Broken promises, ignored treaties, entire towns displaced by documents they never signed. Chief Eagle Sky climbed down from the rock and walked toward Matt. He looked tired, as if he had aged 10 years in one night. "Matt Harrison," he said gravely, "now comes your true test." "My test? Those men speak your language. They come from your world. You understand their laws, their tricks with words, their official papers. I am just an old Apache who doesn't understand how a man can own water that falls from the sky." The chief placed both hands on Matt's shoulders. "You must decide now which side you are on, with your people or with ours." Matt looked around. He saw the 20 women who had welcomed him like family. He saw the children who now ran toward him shouting, "Uncle Matt," in Apache. He saw the elders who had taught him stories of the stars. And finally, he saw Naira standing beside her father's teepee, looking at him with those dark eyes that could see to the bottom of his soul. "There is no decision to make," Matt said firmly. "I am with you." The chief smiled, and Matt saw tears shining in his ancient eyes. "Then go. Speak with them. Discover what they really want and find a way to protect my people without shedding blood." "Without violence?" asked Matt. "Even if they bring it, especially then," replied the chief. "Violence is easy. Solving problems with words and wisdom, that is what separates true men from animals." Matt nodded, understanding the weight of what they were asking. He changed into his cowboy clothes, the ones he had kept since his arrival. He needed to look like one of them, so they would speak honestly. As he walked toward the businessman's camp, he felt a soft hand touch his arm. It was Naira. "Be careful," she whispered. "Those men are snakes in ties. They use pretty words to hide ugly intentions." "I know," replied Matt. "I have met many like them." "Matt," she stopped him as he began to walk away. If you do this, if you defend us against your own people, there is no turning back. You will be one of us forever. Some whites will call you a traitor." Matt took Naira's hand, the first physical contact between them since that night by the stream. "I no longer have my own people. My people are here. With you, with your father, with all of you." He saw tears forming in Naira's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "Then return to me," she said simply. Matt walked alone toward the enemy camp. The businessmen saw him approaching, and one of them, a fat man with an elegant mustache, came out to meet him with a fake smile. "Ah, a civilized man," he exclaimed in English. "Thank God. Do you speak English, sir?" "Perfectly," replied Matt, keeping his voice neutral. "Excellent. My name is Charles Widmore, legal representative of the Colorado River Company, and you are Matt Harrison, living with the Apaches." Whitmore's smile faltered slightly. "Living with them. Interesting. Well, Mr. Harrison, perhaps you can make them see reason. We have legitimate documents granting us full rights to the spring on this mountain." He pulled papers from his briefcase, all with impressive official seals. Matt examined them carefully. He knew enough law to understand what he was seeing. It was a sales contract signed by someone in Washington, selling water rights that never belonged to them. "These documents are worthless," said Matt, handing them back. "Excuse me?" Widmore turned red. "They are official federal government documents. Documents that sell something the government didn't own to sell. This land was guaranteed to the Apaches in the Treaty of 1872. "That treaty was revised," said Whitmore carefully. "Revised or ignored?" Matt felt his temperature rising. "Let me guess. You found a technical clause, some small detail that allows you to claim the treaty is no longer valid." Whitmore straightened up, all pretense of friendliness disappearing. "Look, Harrison, you can get sentimental with these savages all you want, but the facts are simple. We have the legal rights, we have the government's backing, and we will build that dam with or without your cooperation. And if the Apaches refuse, then we will have to take more persuasive measures," said Whitmore with a cold smile. "We have 25 more men arriving next week. Armed men, of course, for our protection." Matt felt ice in his veins. They were threatening war. "And if we found another solution?" asked Matt, forcing his voice to remain calm. "One that gives you access to the water without displacing the Apaches." Whitmore studied him with shark-like eyes. "I'm listening. The mountain has 2 springs, not 1. The second is on the west side, closer to the towns you want to supply. Let me show you. You can build your dam there without touching the water the Apaches need to survive." It was a bluff. Matt didn't know if a second spring existed. But he needed time. He needed to create doubt. He needed to find a way to protect his new family without starting a war. Whitmore narrowed his eyes. "And why should I believe you?" "Because," replied Matt, "I was a water engineer before I was a cowboy. And because, if you build on the main spring, you will have to fight against 50 Apache warriors who know this terrain better than you. They know their own homes. But if there is an alternative that benefits everyone," he left the sentence hanging in the air. Whitmore remained silent for a long time, processing Matt's proposal. Finally, he nodded slowly. "You have 3 days to prove to me that this second spring exists. If not, we proceed with our original plan." Matt returned to the Apache camp with his heart pounding. 3 days to find something he didn't even know existed. He went directly to Tajira's teepee, the expert on plants and desert geography. "I need your help," he said bluntly. "Is there another spring in these mountains?" Tajira looked at him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to read his thoughts. "You told the white men yes. I needed time to think." "Risky," she murmured, "but smart. Come, there is something I must show you." She led him to a cave hidden behind rock waterfalls on the west side of the mountain. Inside, the walls were covered with ancient paintings, symbols, maps, stories told in images. "My ancestors painted this 200 years ago," explained Tajira, pointing to a detailed map. "Look, here there are 3 springs. Not one, the main one we use, a small one that dries up in summer, and a large one on the west side that our grandparents sealed generations ago." "Sealed? Why?" because it was too powerful. It caused floods in the rainy season. They decided to let it sleep. Tajira smiled. But if someone knew how to unseal that spring correctly, controlling its flow would be perfect for a modern dam. Matt felt hope exploding in his chest. Can you take me there? For the next 2 days, Matt worked harder than he ever had in his life. With the help of Tajira and 5 Apache warriors, they located the sealed spring. It was exactly where the ancient paintings indicated, hidden under rocks and vegetation accumulated over decades. Using techniques he had learned as an engineer, Matt calculated the water flow pressure and the best place to build a containment structure. It was perfect, even better than the main spring because it had more volume and was closer to the white settlements. On the 3rd day, he took Whitmore and his men to the site. The businessman was instantly impressed. This is even better than we expected," he admitted, his voice full of barely contained greed. "Construction here would be easier, cheaper, more efficient." "So, do we have an agreement?" asked Matt. "You get your dam here. The Apaches keep their water and their lands." Whitmore extended his hand. "You have a deal, Mr. Harrison." When Matt returned to camp, he was received as a hero. The children ran shouting his name. The women sang victory songs. The warriors lifted him onto their shoulders. He had achieved the impossible, protecting his people without shedding a drop of blood. Chief Eagle Sky waited for him in the central plaza with the entire council of elders gathered behind him. Matt approached, trying to maintain composure, despite the emotion he felt. "Matt Harrison," the chief began, his voice resonating throughout the valley. "You have done what no warrior could do with spears and arrows. You have protected our people with your mind and your heart. You have been the bridge between 2 worlds that we so desperately needed." The chief paused, looking around at the entire assembled tribe. "For this, the Council of Elders and I have made a decision. We offer you a permanent place in our family, not as a guest, but as a brother, as a son, as one of us." Matt felt tears burning his eyes. "Chief, it would be an honor, but there is more," the chief continued, and now a smile touched his lips. "My daughter Naira has waited 28 years to find a man worthy of her, a man with a heart, brave enough to give his last bread to a stranger, a man with a mind brilliant enough to solve problems that others would solve with violence, a man capable of loving 2 worlds at the same time." The chief made a signal, and Naira emerged from the crowd. She wore a traditional wedding dress, completely white with hundreds of turquoise beads, forming designs of eagles and stars. Her hair was loose, falling to her waist like a curtain of black silk. She was the most beautiful vision Matt had ever seen. "Matt Harrison," said the chief solemnly, "would you accept my daughter Naira as your wife according to our customs and traditions?" Matt looked at Naira. She looked at him with eyes bright with unshed tears, awaiting his answer. In that moment, Matt understood that his entire life, all his years wandering aimlessly, had led him exactly to this point, to this valley, to these people, to this woman. "Yes," he said with a firm voice that did not tremble. "With all my heart, yes." The celebration lasted 3 full days. They built huge bonfires that lit up the night sky. They cooked incredible feasts with venison, fish, freshly baked bread, fruits, and vegetables. They played drums until the earth vibrated with the rhythm. They sang songs so ancient that no one remembered who had composed them first. On the day of the ceremony, Matt dressed in a unique combination: Apache leather pants, but also his old cowboy shirt, which he had washed and carefully mended. On his head he wore his cowboy hat, but over it the chief placed an Apache headdress made specially for the occasion. Eagle feathers mixed with horse symbols, representing the union of 2 cultures. Naira approached him under the ceremonial arch decorated with wild desert flowers. She took his hands, and in that moment the entire world seemed to stop. "Weeks ago," she said in a low voice only he could hear, "I saw you give your last bread without thinking twice. In that moment I knew you had found your husband. I only had to wait for you to realize it too." "I knew from the first moment," replied Matt. I just needed time to believe that something so perfect could be real. The chief blessed them according to ancient traditions, calling upon the spirits of the earth, sky, and water to protect their union. Then, surprising Matt, he added a prayer in English, honoring his origins as well. When the ceremony ended, and everyone was celebrating, Matt and Naira momentarily moved away to the edge of the camp, where they could see the entire valley bathed in the golden light of sunset.